Ilara needed to disappear. Not in the dramatic witness protection sense, but in the quiet cellular way a leaf turns inward before unfurling into something new. Her agent had called it a creative sabbatical, her therapist a necessary recalibration. Ilara herself simply thought of it as an escape hatch, a way to breathe air that hadn't been recycled through the stale vents of her old life. The drive had been long, winding through forgotten valleys and over hills cloaked in ancient whispering pines. The GPS had given up an hour ago, leaving her to navigate by intuition and the increasingly faint glow of a twilight sky. When she finally saw the sign, a hand-carved piece of driftwood proclaiming the Whispering Pines Inn, she felt a sigh escape her that had been trapped for weeks. It wasn't a grand establishment, just a sprawling weathered stone house, softened by decades of ivy and the persistent sea mist that seemed to cling to everything here. Lanterns, glowing with a soft, buttery light, illuminated a cobblestone path leading to a heavy oak door. The air smelled of salt, pine and something else, wood smoke perhaps, or damp earth. It was a scent that promised solace. She parked her small car beneath the skeletal branches of a grand oak, its silhouette stark against the bruised purple of the horizon. As she stepped out, the chill bit at her skin, but it was a clean, invigorating cold. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant, rhythmic sigh of the ocean and the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. Taking her worn leather satchel and a small overnight bag, Ilara walked towards the door. Before she could knock, it opened inward, revealing a man. He filled the doorway, not with bulk, but with presence. He was tall, lean, with the kind of broad shoulders that suggested quiet strength. His hair, the color of rich, dark earth, fell casually across a brow that was both thoughtful and rugged. But it was his eyes that truly arrested her. Deep set, the color of moss after rain, they held an ancient, knowing light. They assessed her in a single unhurried sweep, a gaze that felt both intimate and utterly unreadable. He wore a dark, collarless shirt that highlighted the strong line of his throat, and the subtle ripple of muscle beneath the fabric. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms dusted with dark hair, the skin taut over sinew and bone. His hands, she noticed, were large and calloused, the fingers long and tapering, like a sculptor's or a musician's. Ilara Vance? His voice was a low timbre, a rumble that resonated in the quiet space between them. It was like the sound of a cello string plucked softly, a sound that stirred something deep within her. She managed a nod, her own voice suddenly a little breathy. "That's me. I have a reservation." A corner of his mouth tilted, a slow, almost imperceptible curve that hinted at a hidden smile. "I know. We've been expecting you." He stepped back, gesturing her in with a graceful sweep of one of those compelling hands. "Come in. It's colder than it looks out there." The interior of the inn was a revelation. It wasn't opulent, but it was steeped in a warmth that radiated from every corner. A large stone fireplace dominated the main common room, a lazy fire burning within, casting dancing shadows on the heavy wooden beams of the ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of burning cedar and something sweet, baked apples perhaps or cinnamon. Bookshelves lined every wall, overflowing with volumes of every size and age, and comfortable, mismatched armchairs were scattered invitingly. "Rhys," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, warm and brief, but the contact sent a curious jolt through her. It was as if her skin had been waiting for that specific touch, a silent acknowledgement. "Ilara?" she repeated, her name sounding oddly soft on her own tongue. She felt a blush creep up her neck, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. Rhys led her through the welcoming space, his presence a quiet anchor in the new environment. She found herself acutely aware of him, the subtle shift of fabric as he moved, the faint scent of him, something earthy and clean, like rain on warm stone. "Your room is ready," he said, climbing a wide creaking staircase. "It's the furthest one, overlooking the cove. I thought you might appreciate the quiet." "Thank you," she murmured, following him. Her gaze drifted over the ancient portraits on the walls, the worn Persian rugs, the intricate carvings on the banister. Every detail spoke of history, of lives lived within these walls. Her room was, indeed, quiet. It was spacious, with a high slanted ceiling and a window that overlooked a dramatic stretch of coastline. The ocean, now a deep, inky black, roared softly in the distance. A four-poster bed, draped with a heavy quilt, dominated the room, looking impossibly inviting. A small writing desk sat by the window, promising inspiration. "There's tea and coffee downstairs," Whis said, placing her bags gently beside the bed. "Or something stronger, if the journey was particularly trying." His eyes met hers again, and this time, the ancient light in them seemed to deepen, to draw her in. There was a question there, an unspoken invitation to reveal more than just her name. Elara felt a strange pull, a desire to confide, to linger in his gaze. But she was here for solitude, for quiet reflection. She reminded herself of her purpose. "Tea would be lovely, thank you. Later, perhaps. I think I'll just settle in for now." He gave another one of those almost smiles, a subtle acknowledgement of her unspoken reserve. "As you wish. Dinner is served in the dining room at 8, or I can bring something up to you." "8 is fine," she said, perhaps a little too quickly. She wanted to descend into the warmth of the inn again, to encounter him in a less formal setting. With a final lingering look that felt more like a touch, Whis left, closing the door softly behind him. Elara stood in the middle of the room, listening to the fading sound of his footsteps, then to the profound silence that settled in. She walked to the window, pressing her palms against the cool glass. The moon, a sliver of silver, was beginning to emerge from behind the clouds, casting a faint sheen on the churning water below. The air was crisp, tasting of salt and mystery. She unpacked slowly, her mind replaying the brief encounter with Whis. His eyes, his voice, the quiet power of his presence. It was unsettling in the most intriguing way. She hadn't expected to feel anything, least of all this immediate, almost primal awareness of another person. She had come here to shed layers, not to acquire new ones, especially not ones woven from unspoken desire. After a quick, bracing shower, Elara dressed in a soft cashmere sweater and dark trousers, feeling the comforting weight of the fabric against her skin. She braided her long auburn hair, securing it at the nape of her neck. She was an artist, a sculptor of light and shadow, and her work demanded a certain intensity, a stripping away of distractions. She had come to the Whispering Pines to find a new texture, a new form in her art, to sculpt her own fractured sense of self back into wholeness. When she descended the stairs at precisely 8, the inn was even more inviting. The fire in the common room had been stoked higher, and a soft melody, something classical and melancholic, drifted from a hidden speaker. The dining room, adjacent to the common room, was small and intimate, with only 3 tables set. Only one was occupied, by an elderly couple who smiled warmly at her. Whis was there, moving with an effortless grace between the kitchen and the dining room. He had changed into a dark linen shirt, its open collar revealing a hint of chest, the fabric clinging to the subtle contours of his torso. He seemed less like a proprietor and more like a host in his own home, imbued with a natural elegance that was both inviting and slightly intimidating. He met her gaze as she entered, and this time there was a definite smile, a slow unfolding that softened the intensity of his eyes. "Elara, welcome." He gestured to the empty table by the window, already set for one. As she sat, he brought over a carafe of water and a basket of warm, crusty bread. "I hope you like fish," he said, his voice a quiet murmur that cut through the gentle music. "It's freshly caught this afternoon, pan-seared with herbs from the garden." "That sounds wonderful," she replied, picking up a piece of bread. It was still warm, the crust yielding to a soft, airy interior. She spread butter on it, the simple act feeling luxurious in the quiet, candlelit room. He returned with her plate, the aroma of herbs and lemon filling the air. The fish was perfectly cooked, flaky and delicate, served with roasted seasonal vegetables. It was simple yet exquisitely prepared. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. She had assumed he was merely the innkeeper, not the chef. He paused by her table, his hip resting against its edge, making her acutely aware of his proximity. The light from the single candle flickered, illuminating the strong line of his jaw, the faint stubble that shadowed it. "Among other things," he said, his voice laced with a hint of amusement, "I find it grounding, like working with wood or tending the garden." "You work with wood?" she asked, remembering the hand-carved sign, the solid furniture. "I do," he confirmed, his gaze lingering on her face. "There's a workshop out back, if you're ever curious." The invitation hung in the air, a silent thread stretching between them. She felt a warmth spread through her, a blush that had nothing to do with the fire. "Perhaps," she managed, taking a bite of the fish. It was delicious, melting on her tongue. He watched her for a moment longer, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, before he straightened and moved away to attend to the other guests. Elara ate slowly, savoring each bite, but her mind kept drifting back to Whis. There was a raw, elemental quality to him, a quiet power that was deeply alluring. She had come here seeking solitude, but she was finding herself drawn, inexplicably, towards him. It was a dangerous kind of attraction, the kind that promised to unravel all her carefully constructed walls. After dinner, she found herself lingering in the common room, sipping a cup of steaming herbal tea. The elderly couple had retired, leaving her and Whis as the only ones left awake. He sat by the fire, a thick, leather-bound book open in his lap, the flames casting a warm glow on his face. He looked utterly at peace, yet still held that quiet intensity. He glanced up as she stirred her tea, his eyes meeting hers over the rim of her cup. "Did you find what you were looking for tonight, Elara?" he asked, his voice soft, intimate in the quiet room. She frowned slightly. "I'm not sure what I was looking for," she admitted, "beyond a good meal and a comfortable bed." He closed his book, placing it carefully on the small table beside him. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, his gaze unwavering. "Sometimes we don't know what we're looking for until we find it, or until it finds us." The words hung in the air, weighted with an unspoken meaning. Elara felt her pulse quicken. The romantic tension was palpable, a delicate string stretched taut between them. She wanted to ask him what he meant, to delve deeper into the mystery that surrounded him, but a part of her was afraid of what she might uncover, both about him and about herself. "This place," she began, changing the subject slightly, "it feels ancient, full of stories." "It is," Whis affirmed, his eyes now fixed on the dancing flames. "It's been in my family for generations. Each stone, each beam, holds a memory, a whisper of those who have passed through." "Whispering pines," she mused. "Is that where the name comes from? The stories?" He turned his gaze back to her, a slow, knowing smile gracing his lips. "Partly, and partly from the wind through the trees, carrying secrets from the sea, and from something else perhaps, something older." His voice dropped to a near whisper, a captivating cadence that pulled her in. "Something that calls to those who listen closely." She shivered, though not from cold. It was the thrill of the unknown, the tantalizing hint of something mystical that resonated deeply with her artist's soul. "What does it call?" He rose then, moving towards her with a quiet grace that was both fluid and powerful. He stopped a few feet away, close enough for her to catch the subtle scent of wood smoke in him. "It calls to the heart," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. "It calls to what yearns to be set free, to what you truly desire." His eyes, dark and fathomless, held hers. The air between them crackled with an unspoken current, a raw, undeniable energy. Elara felt a tremor run through her, a visceral response to his proximity, to his words. Her gaze dropped to his mouth. Those beautifully sculpted lips that had just spoken such potent truths. She imagined the feel of them, the taste. "And what?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Do you desire, Whis?" His smile widened then, a slow, sensual curve that sent a shiver down her spine. He reached out, his calloused thumb gently brushing a stray tendril of hair from her cheek. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sparked a fire within her, a warmth that spread rapidly through her veins. More than just silence, Alara, he murmured, his voice a silken caress. Much more. His eyes held hers, a silent challenge, a promise. Perhaps, he added, his thumb now tracing the delicate curve of her earlobe. The whispering pines called you here for a reason beyond mere solitude. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a brief moment, savoring the exquisite sensation. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet room. She was utterly undone by his proximity, by the intensity of his gaze, by the sheer magnetism of him. This was not the quiet escape she had planned. This was something far more dangerous, far more exhilarating. When her eyes opened, they were dark with a burgeoning hunger, a desire she hadn't known she possessed until this moment. She looked into his eyes, seeing a reflection of her own longing. The unspoken question hung heavy between them. What happens next? He slowly withdrew his hand, the loss of his touch leaving a sudden, aching void. It's late, he said, his voice a little rougher now as if he, too, was affected by the charged atmosphere. You should rest. Alara nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion. She wanted to protest, to beg him to stay, to explore this nascent connection that pulsed between them. But she also knew the wisdom in restraint, the exquisite torture of prolonged anticipation. As she rose, her knees felt strangely weak. She walked past him, acutely aware of his gaze following her, a warm brand on her back. At the foot of the stairs, she paused, turning back to look at him. He was still standing by the fireplace, watching her, his presence a silent, powerful force. Good night, Whis, she said, her voice a soft caress. Good night, Alara, he replied, his voice a low, resonant echo in the stillness. Sleep well, and listen closely to the whispers tonight. She ascended the stairs, her heart still racing, the scent of him lingering in her awareness. The cool night air of her room offered little solace. Every nerve ending was alive, humming with the memory of his touch, his words, the profound intimacy of their brief exchange. She lay in the large, comfortable bed, the heavy quilt a scant comfort against the internal fire that burned within her. The roar of the ocean seemed louder now, a primal sound that mirrored the awakening stirrings in her own soul. The wind did indeed whisper through the pines outside her window, carrying secrets, promises, and a tantalizing sense of what might be. Alara closed her eyes, but sleep was a distant prospect. Her mind was filled with Whis, his dark eyes, his captivating voice, the strength of his hands, the delicious tension that had arced between them. She had come to the whispering pines seeking to lose herself, but it seemed she was on the verge of finding something entirely new, something thrillingly unpredictable. And she knew with a certainty that both terrified and exhilarated her, that her journey here had only just begun. The whispers had found her, and they were speaking his name. The whispers had found her, and they were speaking his name. Alara woke slowly, the first blush of dawn painting the antique lace curtains a soft rose. Her room, usually a sanctuary of peaceful solitude, now hummed with a different kind of energy, an echo of the previous evening. Whis. His name resonated in the quiet space, a deep, resonant chord struck within her. Every detail of their encounter at the bonfire flickered behind her eyelids. The way the firelight danced in his dark eyes, the subtle curve of his smile, the unexpected warmth of his hand on her arm. A fleeting touch that had seared itself into her memory. She traced the ghost of that touch on her skin, a shiver chasing down her spine that had nothing to do with the morning chill. She had come to Whispering Pines seeking a quiet retreat, a place to shed the weight of a life that had grown too predictable, too demanding, She'd envisioned long walks, hours lost in books, perhaps a gentle rediscovery of herself through nature's balm. She hadn't anticipated a man who moved with the quiet power of the forest itself. A man whose presence felt like a magnetic pull she couldn't resist. He was an interruption to her carefully constructed solitude, a thrilling, dangerous detour. Throwing back the silken covers, Alara padded to the window. The mist still clung to the ancient pines, lending the landscape an ethereal, almost mythical quality. She imagined him out there, somewhere on the sprawling estate, perhaps already awake, moving through the dew-kissed grounds with the same silent grace she'd observed last night. The thought sent a fresh wave of heat through her, a blush rising to her cheeks. She pressed her palms to the cool glass, trying to steady the unfamiliar flutter in her chest. After a long indulgent bath infused with lavender and pine, Alara dressed in a simple cashmere sweater, the color of morning mist, and dark trousers, a practical yet elegant ensemble. She descended to the dining room, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries mingled invitingly. The room was quiet, only a few other guests scattered around, lost in their own morning rituals. She chose a small table by a window, overlooking a manicured rose garden, still heavy with dew. As she sipped her coffee, a low, rich voice spoke from just behind her. "Good morning, Alara." Her breath hitched. She hadn't heard him approach. "Whis." She turned slowly, her heart now thrumming a quickened rhythm. He stood there, leaning casually against the doorframe, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He was dressed in a dark fitted shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and sturdy trousers. His dark hair, still slightly damp, suggested he might have just come from an early morning ride or a brisk walk. He looked utterly, effortlessly magnificent. "Whis," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "Good morning." He pushed off the frame and walked towards her table, his movements fluid and unhurried. "I trust you slept well?" His eyes, those captivating dark pools, held a knowing glint, as if he could read the turmoil of her dreams. "As well as can be expected," she replied, a shy smile touching her lips. "The air here is incredibly invigorating." He chuckled, a low rumbling sound that resonated deep within her. "It is. It has a way of stirring things up, doesn't it?" He paused, his gaze lingering on her. "I was just about to head out for a walk around the northern trails. The mist lifts beautifully this time of day, reveals some of the estate's hidden gems. Would you care to join me?" The invitation was so simple, so direct, and yet it felt charged with unspoken possibility. Her mind raced. Yes. 1,000 times yes. "I would love to," she said, her voice steadier now, betraying none of the internal chaos. "Excellent." He gestured towards the door. "Finish your coffee, and meet me by the stables in 15 minutes. I'll make sure you have proper walking shoes." He turned and left as quietly as he had arrived, leaving Alara with a renewed surge of adrenaline. Hidden gems. She felt like she was on the verge of discovering one herself. She quickly finished her coffee, her breakfast suddenly forgotten, and practically flew back to her room to change into more appropriate attire. 15 minutes later, she stood by the ancient stone stables, the scent of hay and horse a comforting, earthy perfume. Whis emerged from a side door, carrying a pair of sturdy, ankle-high leather boots. "These should fit," he said, handing them to her. "The trails can be a little uneven, and the dew makes them slick." As she sat on a wooden bench to change her shoes, he watched her, his gaze steady and warm. His presence was so potent, so undeniably male, that she felt a delicious warmth spread through her veins. When she looked up, he was still watching, a faint, unreadable expression on his face. "Ready?" he asked, once she had tied the laces. "Ready," she confirmed, standing. They set off, the soft crunch of gravel under their boots, the only sound for a while. The morning air was crisp and cool, carrying the sharp clean scent of pine and damp earth. As they moved deeper into the woods, the mist began to recede, revealing ancient gnarled trees, their branches laden with moss. Sunlight dappled through the canopy, painting shifting patterns on the forest floor. Whis walked with an easy, powerful stride, his shoulders broad, his back straight. Alara found herself stealing glances at him, appreciating the subtle flecks of muscle beneath his shirt as he moved. He seemed utterly at home here, natural extension of the wild beauty surrounding them. "This part of the estate is centuries old," he explained, his voice a low murmur that seemed to blend seamlessly with the rustle of leaves. "The first Whis, my ancestor, planted many of these pines himself. They say he spoke to them, that they whispered back. Ilara smiled, remembering the name of the estate. The Whispering Pines. Indeed, and they do whisper, if you listen closely enough. He stopped by a particularly massive pine, its trunk scarred with the passage of time. He placed a hand on its rough bark, his fingers splayed, as if in silent communication. This one, she's seen generations come and go. There was a reverence in his touch, a deep connection to the land that Ilara found profoundly moving. She watched him, captivated, feeling an unexpected pang of longing, for this kind of rootedness, this sense of belonging to something ancient and enduring. They continued their walk, Whis pointing out various flora and fauna, his knowledge of the estate encyclopedic. He spoke of the deer that grazed in the meadows, the birds that nested in the highest branches, the rare wildflowers that bloomed in hidden clearings. His passion was infectious, and Ilara found herself drawn further and further into his world. They came to a small, secluded waterfall, its waters tumbling over moss-covered rocks into a clear, emerald pool. Sunlight fractured through the leaves overhead, creating a kaleidoscope of light on the water's surface. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a secret sanctuary nestled deep within the woods. "This is one of my favorite spots," Whis said, his voice soft to hear, almost intimate. "I come here when I need to clear my head, or simply to listen." He sat on a smooth, flat rock by the edge of the pool, and Ilara joined him, their shoulders brushing. The proximity sent a jolt through her, a warmth that spread outward from where their bodies touched. The air, already rich with the scent of damp earth and pine, now carried the clean metallic tang of the falling water. "It's magnificent," Ilara whispered, awestruck, like something out of a dream. He turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers. There was an intensity in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Dreams can sometimes be more real than we imagine, can't they?" His words hung in the air, a silent invitation, a question that begged a deeper answer. Ilara felt a blush creep up her neck, a delicious heat blossoming in her chest. She looked away, back at the shimmering water, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Why did you come to Whispering Pines, Ilara?" he asked, his voice low, gentle, but with an underlying current of probing curiosity. She hesitated, then decided to be honest. There was something about Whis that made her want to shed her carefully constructed defenses. I needed a change, a place to get away from everything. My life had become a meticulously planned schedule, devoid of spontaneity. I felt like I was losing myself." He nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on her. "And have you found what you were looking for?" Ilara finally met his eyes again. "I think," she began, a small, tentative smile forming on her lips, "I think I'm finding something entirely different, something I didn't even know I needed to look for." A slow smile spread across Whis's face, a genuine, heart-stopping smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Sometimes the best discoveries are those we stumble upon, aren't they?" His hand, warm and strong, reached out and gently covered hers where it rested on the rock between them. The contact was electric, a jolt that went straight to her core. Her fingers tingled, and a fierce, undeniable longing flared within her. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm upwards, intertwining her fingers with his. His thumb stroked the back of her hand, a feather-light touch that sent shivers of exquisite pleasure through her. The sound of the waterfall seemed to fade, replaced by the frantic beat of her own heart. She looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. His eyes were dark, intense, reflecting a desire that mirrored her own. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken emotions, with a yearning that had been building since their first glance. He leaned closer, his gaze dropping to her lips. Ilara's breath hitched again. She could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the faint, earthy scent of him, mingled with the fresh air of the forest. Her own lips parted slightly, an unconscious invitation. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a husky whisper, barely audible above the waterfall. He closed the distance, his lips brushing hers, soft and tentative at first, a mere suggestion. It was an exquisite torment, a promise of something more. Ilara leaned into him, her hand tightening around his. And then, his lips pressed more firmly. A gentle seeking, a tender exploration. The kiss deepened slowly, deliciously. It wasn't rushed or demanding, but a gentle unfolding, a revelation. His hand moved from hers, cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin, sending fire through her veins. Her own hand instinctively reached up, resting on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. His lips were soft, warm, tasting of fresh air, and something uniquely unhim. She felt herself melting into him, all her carefully constructed walls crumbling under the force of this unexpected, profound connection. She kissed him back with an intensity that surprised her, a hunger she hadn't known she possessed. When they finally broke apart, it was only by inches, their foreheads still resting together, their breaths mingling. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. They were dark with desire, but also with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Wow!" she breathed. The single word a testament to the raw emotion that had just passed between them. He smiled, a slow, sensual curve of his lips. Indeed. He touched her bottom lip with his thumb, a lingering, possessive gesture. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you." Her cheeks flushed, a deeper, hotter blush this time. "And you," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The honesty of the moment was intoxicating. He gently pulled away, though his hand still lingered on her cheek for a moment, before dropping to rest on her knee. "We should probably head back," he said, his voice a little rougher now. "Dinner will be served soon, and I have some estate matters to attend to." Ilara felt a pang of disappointment, but she understood. This wasn't a fleeting holiday romance. It felt like the beginning of something significant, something that deserved time and careful tending. She nodded, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Of course." They rose from the rocks, a comfortable silence settling between them, yet charged with the aftermath of their kiss. As they walked back, the forest felt even more alive, more vibrant, as if celebrating the nascent connection between them. Every rustle of leaves, every ray of sunlight, seemed imbued with a new meaning. Back at the stables, Whis helped her take off the boots, his fingers brushing hers, sending another spark through her. "Thank you for the walk, Whis," Ilara said, looking up at him. "It was perfect." He met her gaze, his eyes still holding that deep, intense warmth. "The pleasure was all mine, Ilara. I'll see you at dinner." With a nod, he turned and disappeared into the stable, leaving Ilara standing there, her body buzzing, her mind reeling. She returned to her room in a daze, the world around her seeming to shimmer with newfound beauty. She ran her fingers over her lips, still tasting his kiss, still feeling the imprint of his hand on her cheek. That evening, Ilara took extra care with her appearance. She chose a dress of deep emerald silk, the color echoing the forest pool, its elegant cut flattering her figure without being overtly revealing. She styled her hair loosely, letting it fall around her shoulders, and applied a subtle touch of makeup, enhancing her eyes. She wanted to look beautiful for him, to show him that she was ready for whatever this burgeoning connection might bring. When she descended to the dining room, Whis was already there, standing by the large stone fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked up as she entered, and his eyes immediately sought hers. A slow, appreciative smile spread across his face, and Ilara felt her heart leap. The unspoken compliment was more potent than any words. He moved towards her, his gaze never leaving hers. "You look stunning, Ilara," he said, his voice low, intimate, meant only for her ears. "And you, Whis," she replied, a genuine warmth coloring her cheeks. He wore a dark suit jacket over a crisp white shirt, making him look even more devastatingly handsome. He offered her his arm, and she slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, feeling the firm muscle beneath the fabric. The familiar spark ignited between them, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that was forming. He led her to a secluded table in a quieter corner of the dining room, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. Throughout dinner, their conversation flowed effortlessly. They spoke of their lives, their passions, their dreams. Ilara found herself opening up to Whis in a way she hadn't to anyone in years. She told him about her work, her love for art, the quiet yearning for something more that had led her to Whispering Pines. He listened intently, his dark eyes never leaving her face, making her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in a long time. Whis in turn spoke of his deep connection to the estate, his ancestors, the responsibility he felt to preserve its history and beauty. He shared anecdotes from his childhood, growing up amidst the ancient pines, learning the secrets of the land. His stories were rich with history and heart, painting a vivid picture of a man deeply rooted, yet with a restless, powerful spirit. As the evening deepened, and the other guests slowly dispersed, they remained at their table, the candlelight flickering between them, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The air was thick with a delicious tension, a simmering desire that was both exhilarating and agonizing. "Would you like a nightcap, Elara?" Whis asked, his voice a soft murmur, barely above a whisper. "Perhaps by the fire in the drawing room?" "I would like that very much," she said, her voice a little husky. He led her to the grand drawing room, a cavernous space warmed by a roaring fire and a massive stone hearth. The room was empty, save for them. He poured them each a glass of aged brandy, the amber liquid glowing in the firelight. They settled onto a plush velvet sofa facing the flames, the warmth of the fire embracing them. The soft glow illuminated Whis's features, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw, the sensuous curve of his lips. Elara watched him, her gaze lingering, a deep ache blossoming in her chest. He took a sip of his brandy, his eyes fixed on the dancing flames. "Sometimes," he began, his voice low, "I feel as though the past and present converge in this room. All the stories, all the lives lived within these walls. They leave an imprint. Do you feel them?" Elara asked, leaning slightly closer, drawn in by his words, by his presence. He turned his head, his gaze meeting hers. "I do. And tonight," he said, his voice dropping, becoming almost a caress, "I feel a new story beginning." He reached out, his hand gently tracing the line of her jaw, his touch sending shivers through her. His fingers lingered on her skin, warm and firm, before cupping her cheek. Elara leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the sensation. "Elara," he murmured, his thumb stroking her skin, sending a wave of delicious heat through her. "You have no idea what you do to me." Her eyes opened, meeting his, which were dark and smoldering with desire. "I think," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "I might have some idea. Because you," she paused, her breath catching, "you do the same to me." He leaned in, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to pull away. But she had no desire to. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation. His lips met hers, softly at first, a tender exploration that quickly deepened into something more passionate, more demanding. His free hand went to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. Elara's arms went around his neck, her fingers tangling in the thick hair at his nape. The kiss was intoxicating, a heady blend of brandy and desire, of longing fulfilled and promises yet to come. His mouth moved over hers with an exquisite hunger, tasting, teasing, devouring. He shifted, turning fully towards her, his leg brushing against hers, sending a fresh jolt of electricity through her. The heat of his body pressed against hers, a delicious torment. His hand moved from her waist, tracing a path up her back, his touch firm and possessive. She arched into him, a soft moan escaping her lips, lost in the depths of their kiss. His fingers found the silk of her dress, caressing the smooth fabric, then slipping beneath it to rest on the bare skin of her lower back. Her skin tingled where he touched her, a trail of fire spreading outwards. She felt utterly consumed by him, by the passion that flared between them, a wildfire igniting in the quiet solitude of the drawing room. When he finally broke the kiss, it was with a soft groan, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths ragged. His eyes, when they met hers, were blazing with an intensity that took her breath away. "You are exquisite, Elara," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. He pressed another soft, lingering kiss to her lips, then to her temple, then down the curve of her jaw. Elara's body hummed with a delicious ache, a yearning for more, for everything he had to offer. She wanted to surrender to the exquisite sensation, to let herself be completely swept away. But there was also a delicious tension in the restraint, a knowledge that this was a journey, not a destination. He pulled back slightly, his hands still on her waist, holding her close. His gaze searched hers, a question in their depths. "We should probably call it a night, Elara," he said, his voice laced with regret, but also with a quiet strength. "Unless, of course, you wish for the story to continue." His words, echoing her earlier thought, sent a fresh wave of heat through her. The story. Their story. She knew with a certainty that thrilled her to her core that this was just the beginning. The whispers of the pines had indeed found her, and they were speaking not just his name, but a promise of a future she hadn't dared to dream of. She looked into his eyes, her heart full, her body alight with a longing that was both physical and profoundly emotional. "The story has only just begun, Rhys," she whispered back, her fingers gently tracing the strong line of his jaw. "And I have a feeling it's going to be quite a tale." He smiled, a slow, sensual smile that promised untold delights. He leaned in, kissing her one last time, a deep, lingering kiss that left her breathless and yearning for the next chapter. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet, his hand never leaving hers. As they walked towards the door, the fire cast their elongated shadows on the wall, two figures entwined, moving towards an uncertain, yet thrillingly anticipated dawn. The whispers outside grew louder, no longer just speaking his name, but singing a symphony of expectation, of passion, of a love waiting to unfold. Elara knew with every fiber of her being that she was ready to listen. The door, crafted from ancient dark wood, swung open with a soft sigh, revealing not the expected grandeur of a palace hallway, but a narrow winding path, bathed in the ethereal glow of a moonless night. Above, the sky was a velvet tapestry, studded with diamonds, and the air, crisp and cool, carried the scent of pine needles and damp earth. The whispers had indeed transformed into a symphony, a chorus of rustling leaves, the distant murmur of a hidden stream, the gentle hum of the forest coming alive in the darkness. It was a music that spoke of ancient magic, of primal longings, and of a love as old as the mountains themselves. Kaelan led her out, his hand a warm anchor in hers. He didn't look back at the study, at the dying embers of the fire. His gaze was fixed forward, on the path that seemed to materialize just for them, illuminated by the faint luminescence of moss-covered stones. Elara felt a tremor of anticipation ripple through her. This wasn't just a journey from one room to another. It was a passage into a different realm, a sacred space where the boundaries of the mundane dissolved. They walked in silence for a time, the only sounds their soft footsteps, and the enveloping song of the night. Elara's heart beat a rhythm against her ribs, echoing the wild pulse of the forest. She noticed the small details. The way Kaelan's shoulders moved beneath his tunic, the strength in his grip, the quiet confidence in his stride. He was more than a king, he was a guardian of this ancient magic, a man deeply attuned to the heartbeat of the land. The path widened, leading them into a clearing she hadn't known existed. In its center stood a small, circular dwelling, crafted from smooth, pale stones, and roofed with interwoven branches and leaves that seemed to glow with an inner light. It wasn't a grand chamber, but a sanctuary, intimate and secluded. A faint, golden light spilled from its doorway, inviting them in. This, Kaelan's voice was a low murmur, breaking the silence, is where the land itself breathes, where true connection is forged. He led her through the doorway, and Elara gasped softly. The interior was simple yet breathtaking. The floor was covered in soft, woven rugs, and in the center, a large, low bed was draped with furs and silken sheets, shimmering in the soft light emanating from strategically placed glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The air was warm, fragrant with cedar, and a subtle, intoxicating sweetness she couldn't quite place. There was no fire, no candles, just the gentle, pulsating glow of the crystals, casting dancing shadows that played across the curves of the room and the inviting expanse of the bed. Kaelan turned to her. His eyes, in the soft light, were deep pools of desire and tenderness. He released her hand, only to cup her face gently, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones. "Ilara," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion, "you are more beautiful than any star in this sky." She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the warmth of his skin against hers. When she opened them, she saw the raw longing in his gaze, mirroring her own. "Kaelan," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread, I feel as though I've been waiting for this moment my entire life." A small, knowing smile played on his lips. "And I for countless lifetimes, my love." He lowered his head, slowly, giving her time to meet him, to decide. She closed the small distance between them, her lips parting slightly in invitation. His kiss was soft at first, a gentle exploration, a promise. Then, as her hands found their way to his chest, clutching the fabric of his tunic, it deepened, becoming a slow, burning declaration. His lips moved over hers with a practiced artistry, tasting, teasing, drawing her essence into him. His hand slid from her face, down her neck, over her shoulders, and then found the ties of her gown. His fingers were deft, untying the delicate laces that held the garment in place. The fabric, already loose, began to fall away, revealing the smooth curve of her collarbone, the delicate slope of her shoulders. She shivered, not from cold, but from the exquisite sensation of anticipation. He broke the kiss, just enough to gaze at her, his eyes devouring every inch of skin revealed by the falling gown. "You are radiant," he murmured, his voice husky. He knelt before her, and Ilara's breath caught in her throat. With a reverence that made her heart ache, he slowly pushed the fabric down over her hips, past her thighs, until it pooled at her feet. She stood before him, clad only in her shift, the thin linen a whisper against her skin. He rose, his hands reaching for the hem of her shift. Slowly, deliberately, he drew it upwards, his knuckles brushing against the sensitive skin of her stomach, her ribs, her breasts. Each touch was an electric current, igniting a fire deep within her. The shift slid over her head, and for a breathless moment, she stood completely bare, bathed in the soft golden light, vulnerable and utterly exhilarated. Kaelan's gaze swept over her, a slow, appreciative journey that left her skin tingling. His eyes lingered on her breasts, the nipples already hardened into tight buds, then traveled down the gentle curve of her stomach, the flare of her hips, the long line of her legs. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he cupped her breast, his thumb brushing over the taut peak. A soft moan escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. "So beautiful," he whispered again, his voice raw. He then began to shed his own clothes. His tunic was pulled over his head, revealing the broad expanse of his chest, taut with muscle, lightly dusted with dark hair that narrowed to a line down his abdomen. Ilara's eyes traced the powerful lines of his physique, the strength evident in every curve and plane. He unbuckled his belt, the leather a soft rasp in the quiet room, and his breeches followed, revealing the lean, powerful lines of his legs and the potent evidence of his desire. He stood before her, a magnificent vision of masculinity, his body a testament to strength and grace. The golden light played over his skin, highlighting the subtle dance of his muscles. Ilara felt a deep ache within her, a hunger that transcended mere physical desire. It was a yearning for complete union, for the merging of souls. He reached for her again, pulling her gently into his embrace. Their naked bodies met, skin against skin, a shocking, glorious contact that sent shivers through them both. Her breasts pressed against his chest. Her hips nestled against his, and she felt the hard ridge of his arousal against her belly. A gasp escaped her, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in the hollow of his shoulder, inhaling his scent, a potent mix of forest musk and his own unique essence. His hands roamed over her back, tracing the delicate curve of her spine, then dipping lower to cup her buttocks, pressing her even closer against him. The friction of their bodies was an exquisite torment, a slow, delicious build-up of pressure and sensation. He swayed with her, a slow, intimate dance that spoke of ancient rhythms, of bodies perfectly attuned. "Elara," he murmured against her hair, his lips brushing her temple. "My heart has been calling for you for so long." "And mine, Kaelin," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion, "has finally found its home." He lifted her effortlessly into his arms, carrying her the few steps to the low bed. He laid her down gently amidst the furs and silken sheets, his eyes never leaving hers. The softness enveloped her, a luxurious cradle for their passion. He knelt beside the bed, his gaze still locked on hers, before slowly, deliberately, he joined her. He propped himself on an elbow, his free hand beginning a slow, sensual exploration of her body. His fingers traced the delicate curve of her jaw, the line of her throat, lingered at the pulse point fluttering wildly there, then moved down, over her collarbone, her shoulder, the soft swell of her breast. He stroked the sensitive skin of her inner arm, then her side, his touch light as a butterfly's wing, yet leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps as his fingers continued their journey, exploring the landscape of her desire. He moved to her thigh, stroking the smooth skin, moving higher and higher, until his fingertips brushed against the soft curls between her legs. A jolt, powerful and undeniable, shot through her, and her hips instinctively arched upwards. "You feel it too, my love," he whispered, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. She could only nod, her eyes wide with a mixture of longing and vulnerability. His fingers delved deeper, finding the tender, sensitive flesh, stroking, teasing, exploring the delicate folds. Elara whimpered, her body arching, her fingers clutching the furs beneath her. The pleasure was intense, a throbbing heat that spread outwards from her core, radiating through her limbs. He moved with a rhythm that was both patient and demanding, drawing her closer and closer to the precipice. Her hands, emboldened by the rising tide of desire, reached for him, exploring the hard planes of his chest, the taut muscles of his arms, the strong curve of his neck. She pulled him closer, needing his mouth on hers, needing to taste him, to feel the press of his body against hers. He responded instantly, his lips claiming hers in a deep, hungry kiss that consumed her. His tongue danced with hers, a passionate duel that left her breathless. As their mouths melded, his fingers continued their exquisite torment below, bringing her to the brink of release. She cried out, a soft, muffled sound against his lips, as a wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over her, shaking her to her core. Her body convulsed, her muscles tightening, then relaxing into a blissful surrender. He pulled back just slightly, his eyes still closed, savoring the aftermath of her climax. When he opened them, they were dark with raw desire, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Now," he murmured, his voice hoarse, "let us complete this union, my heart." He shifted, positioning himself above her. She opened her legs, inviting him in, her gaze fixed on his, a silent plea. He moved slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving hers, watching her expression as he began to enter her. The initial pressure was intense, a stretching, a fullness that was both thrilling and slightly overwhelming. She gasped, her body adjusting to his presence, her muscles instinctively clenching around him. He paused, giving her time, his forehead resting against hers, his breath mingling with hers. "Easy, my love," he whispered, his voice filled with tenderness. "Let me in. Let us become one." She nodded, a tear escaping the corner of her eye, not of pain but of profound emotion. She relaxed, trusting him completely, allowing her body to yield. With a slow, deliberate thrust, he moved deeper, fully occupying her, filling the empty spaces within her that had yearned for his presence. A deep, guttural groan escaped him, a sound of pure satisfaction. Elara felt utterly complete, whole in a way she had never known before. Their bodies were perfectly aligned, a seamless fit, as if they had been crafted for this very purpose. He began to move, a slow, rhythmic sway that quickly built in intensity. Each thrust was a declaration, a promise, a deepening of their bond. Elara met him, matching his rhythm, her hips arching, her legs wrapping around his waist, drawing him even closer. The friction, the pressure, the exquisite sensation of their bodies melding together, sent shockwaves of pleasure through her. The glowing crystals in the walls seemed to pulse with their passion, casting a warm, enveloping light that made their entwined bodies appear as if carved from ancient gold. The air grew thick with their shared desire, with the scent of their heated skin, with the soft gasps and moans that punctuated the silence. Elara's senses were overwhelmed. She could feel every inch of his skin against hers, the glide of their bodies, the delicious friction of their pubic bones meeting. She could hear the ragged rhythm of his breathing, the quickening beat of her own heart. She tasted him on her lips, a primal, intoxicating flavor. With each powerful thrust, Kalen drove them higher, closer to the edge. He leaned down, burying his face in the curve of her neck, his lips trailing hot kisses along her sensitive skin, his teeth gently nipping at her earlobe. "Elara," he breathed, "my queen, my life, my love." His words, spoken in the throes of their passion, ignited a new fire within her. She cried out his name, her voice raw with emotion, her body arching violently against him. The tension coiled tighter and tighter, a delicious agony that promised ultimate release. He felt her nearing the peak, and he quickened his pace, driving into her with a powerful, relentless rhythm. Their bodies became a blur of motion, a symphony of touch and sensation. With a final explosive surge, Elara cried out, her body convulsing around him, a wave of pure, unadulterated ecstasy washing over her. A moment later, with a deep groan, Kalen followed her, his body tensing, then releasing in a powerful climax that reverberated through them both. He collapsed against her, his weight a comforting pressure, his breath ragged against her ear. They lay entwined, their bodies still humming with the aftershocks of their shared release. The world outside, the whispers and the symphony, had faded into a soft, contented hum, replaced by the gentle thumping of two hearts, beating in perfect unison. Slowly, Kalen shifted, propping himself up on an elbow to gaze down at her. His eyes, though still clouded with passion, were filled with a profound tenderness. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping away a tear that had escaped her eye. "Are you well, my love?" he whispered, his voice still hoarse. Elara smiled, a soft, blissful smile. "More than well, Kalen. I feel complete. Truly wonderfully complete." He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, then her nose, and finally, a lingering tender kiss to her lips. "You are everything I ever dreamed of, Elara, and more." They lay in comfortable silence for a long time, simply holding each other, savoring the warmth of their bodies, the quiet intimacy that now bound them. The glow of the crystals seemed to soften, casting a gentle, peaceful light over their spent forms. Elara felt utterly safe, cherished, and deeply loved. The journey had been long, the path uncertain, but arriving here, in Kalen's arms, felt like the culmination of every hope and dream she had ever harbored. Eventually, sleep claimed them, a deep, restorative slumber, their bodies intertwined, their breathing synchronized. Elara awoke slowly, a gentle warmth enveloping her. For a moment, she was disoriented. The soft light and the unfamiliar surroundings a hazy dream. Then memory flooded back, vivid and exhilarating. She was in Kalen's arms, nestled against his strong chest, his arm draped possessively over her waist. The soft fur beneath them, the silken sheets, the subtle scent of cedar in their shared passion, It all came rushing back. She stirred, stretching languidly, and felt Kaelin's arm tighten around her, pulling her closer. He murmured something incoherent in his sleep, a soft, contented sound that made her smile. She turned in his embrace, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the stubble rough against her skin. He looked utterly peaceful in sleep, his features softened, a slight smile playing on his lips. The crystals in the walls had dimmed even further, giving way to the first faint blush of dawn, filtering through the leafy roof. A soft, golden light began to paint the interior of their sanctuary, chasing away the shadows of the night. It was a new day, a new beginning marked by the rising sun and the quiet intimacy of their shared morning. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "Kaelin?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. His eyes fluttered open, dark and sleepy, then widened as they focused on her. A slow, breathtaking smile spread across his face, a smile of pure joy and profound contentment. "Good morning, my queen," he rasped, his voice still thick with sleep. He tightened his embrace, pulling her even closer until there was no space left between them. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I've ever slept," she confessed, her heart swelling with emotion. "And you?" "Like a man who has finally found his missing piece," he said, his gaze intense, unwavering. He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. "You are even more beautiful in the light of dawn, Elara, bathed in the promise of a new day." She blushed, a warm flush spreading across her skin. The vulnerability of the night before had given way to a comfortable intimacy, a quiet confidence that settled deep within her. There was no awkwardness, no regret, only a profound sense of rightness. They lay tangled in the furs and sheets, talking in soft murmurs, sharing whispered secrets and gentle touches. Kaelin spoke of his hopes for the kingdom, his desire to bring peace and prosperity to his people. Elara, in turn, spoke of her own dreams, of finding her place, of contributing to a world she was only just beginning to understand. Their conversation wove together seamlessly, a testament to the deep connection they had forged. As the sun rose higher, casting shafts of golden light through the leaves, Kaelin finally stirred, regretfully. "As much as I wish we could stay here forever, my love. The day calls. There are duties to attend to." Elara nodded, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "I understand." But he didn't move immediately. Instead, he leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her lips. "But know this, Elara," he whispered against her mouth. "Every night, and every moment between, you are mine, and I, yours." They rose from the bed, moving with a comfortable ease that spoke of their newfound intimacy. As they dressed, Elara found herself catching his eye. A shy smile exchanged, a silent understanding passing between them. The simple act of pulling on clothes, which might have felt mundane, was imbued with a sensual awareness, a quiet acknowledgement of the bodies that had so recently entwined. When they emerged from the small, circular dwelling, the forest was alive with the vibrant energy of morning. Birds sang their cheerful melodies. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, and the air was fresh and invigorating. The path that had led them there now seemed clearer, brighter, guiding them back towards the heart of the palace. The whispers outside were gone, replaced by the sounds of the waking world. The distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the murmur of voices, the bustling activity of the castle grounds. But Elara knew that the symphony of expectation, of passion, of a love waiting to unfold, had not truly ceased. It had simply woven itself into the fabric of their lives, a quiet melody that would accompany them always. As they walked hand in hand back towards the main castle, Elara felt a profound sense of belonging. The uncertainty she had carried for so long had vanished, replaced by a deep-seated peace. She was no longer just an orphaned noblewoman, a pawn in a political game. She was Elara, a woman who had found her voice, her strength, and her heart. And she was Kaelin's queen, not just by title, but by the undeniable bond forged in the crucible of shared desire and unwavering love. Kaelin squeezed her hand, his gaze meeting hers. A knowing smile passed between them, a silent promise of all the nights and dawns yet to come. The future stretched before them, no longer an intimidating unknown, but a thrilling adventure they would face together, hand in hand, heart to heart. The whispers of the past had led them to this moment, and the symphony of their love would guide them into a future, more beautiful and passionate than either of them could have ever dreamed. Elara knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was finally home.